This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event. My name is Carlo Bobilas, and I'll be your moderator for the session. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, technical leader, technical marketing engineer, Karthik Kumar Thatikonda. But before I hand over the mic, I do have a few housekeeping items to cover about today's session. Today's session will be recorded and made available on demand. I will provide you with some details at the end. Also, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. So if you are on WebEx and have a question for our speaker, please feel free to send it through the WebEx question and answer panel, where our wonderful panelists are ready to respond. For those tuning into our live stream, we thank you very much for joining in as well. However, Q&A is limited to those via WebEx. We do have a post-event discussion thread over on the Cisco Learning Network where you can follow up with any further questions you may have. So without any further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Karthik. Karthik, over to you.
Thank you, Carlo. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever time zone you're dialing. And welcome to the session about external service integrations with the Catalyst SD-WAN. And my name is Karthik. I'm from the technical leader, technical marketing engineer from the Cisco Catalyst SD-WAN product. Just to level set, if you look at all our SD-WAN innovations that we have been coming up, all the areas around cloud on the top left, you can see we have various innovations, every release over release on each of these buckets or areas. So if you look at towards the bottom, towards next to the platform where it says managed service. So that part is what we're going to focus today. But these are at a high level, like some of the integrations that we have been supporting throughout our journey of Catalyst SD-WAN. And today's session, I'm going to cover about the 20.16, 17.16 release, which we just shipped out last month, which is fairly new. So what are the innovations around the managed services area? We'll cover on those. And these are other areas where Cisco has, continuing and is investing to make sure that the SD-WAN solution has all the capabilities and provides like all the use cases for the customers. Within the managed services, let me take a look at three key areas. One is around multi-tenancy. So again, like if you're familiar with SD-WAN, like we have the manager, which are the control plane network management station, like NMS for SD-WAN. And you can have a single dashboard for hosting multiple customers or tenants of yours. So prior to multi-tenancy, if you want to have like your fabric support like 10 customers, you would spin up like 10 different instances of manager, controllers or vSmarts, and then validators or vBonds. Now that with multi-tenancy, we have multi-tenancy inbuilt into the control plane totally. So you'll have single dashboard. With one single dashboard, you can monitor all your tenants' networks, and even without any cost incurred with managing these, because now it simplifies like deployment. And we also started supporting from 20.13 release onwards, a single node, one node multi-tenant manager, so that is started supporting from 20.13 onwards. So I essentially you would just require a single node, in order to manage, if you're doing some proof of concept or trying to bring this up in your labs, you can just start out with a single node. And not only that, we have started investing around multi-tenancy, and in the prior releases, we started multi-tenancy on the data plane with the 20.12 release onwards. So that which is the corresponding release on the device is 17.12 onwards. We started supporting multi-tenancy at the edge. So you can host multiple tenants, and we can share the data plane for all those on a single device. So this will be, imagine like you are hosting some services in your data center. Like if you are a service provider, you are hosting some tooling systems like OSS, BSS systems, and in that case, it will be beneficial if you can, if without multi-tenancy, if you were to deploy multiple customers, you would have to manage those tooling systems. For each customer, you have to deploy a single node of data plane device, or a device that can terminate all the IPsec connections, or those secure tunnels, right? So you would have to incorporate like every single customer a dedicated device. Now with shared data plane, you can consolidate all those customers, and now you can save costs by deploying just one single device. So those are the areas which we started supporting in the prior releases. And now in the subsequent slides, I'll talk about more on the co-policy. So if you have, if you're a service provider and you have some customers coming up to you and asking for, accessing the manager, and they would like to also control some of the settings, but you as a provider can further enforce more granular control on what services, if you have provided them, let's say you provided them TACAX service or a AAA service, and they want to onboard their own server for user authentication or device authentication, you can control now as a service provider, like you can give them management so that they can, the customer administrators can access some of the pages. So we'll talk about that in detail. And then you also can enforce full control, wherein as a provider, you can give them just read access. So we have enhancements around these in the services integration for webhooks and AAA or TACAX. We'll talk about that provider managed versus tenant managed. So these are some of the high-level items. If I talked about earlier slide, a multi-tenant edge device, where it can now terminate multiple customers on a single device. So imagine this is your central office, or it's your service provider point of presence location. So in this case, if you want to save costs, you can host all these multiple customers on a single device. We tested 30 tenants. So we can terminate 30 tenants on a single device, and they all can access your tooling systems for all the customers. So now you're saving cost of not deploying like single device for each customer. So this is supported, as I said, and these are the platforms which we tested and recommended. Again, our recommendation is to go with the newer generation Catalyst 8000, 8500s, and 8300s as seen here. So again, this is not something new, but I just wanted to give a 10,000 feet overview of all the solution components. So with that, let me come to the agenda today. For 20.16, we'll give an overview of what's new on the capabilities. Then we'll talk about how to configure and verify. And then I will also show you a live demonstration during the presentation. And then we'll finally provide some references on where to look for to get more additional data. In terms of the external service integration, you can see that I see somebody was saying the audio is low. So is it on my end, or Carlo? And is my audio fine, or is it just?
It's coming loud and clear from my end. Maybe I would suggest changing the audio from maybe to call in instead to the attendee as an option.
Oh, okay, okay. I think maybe it's their side. Okay. So just if you can, yeah, respond to that, that would be nice. Okay. All right. Moving along. So let's say you have a use case where for device authentication, you have a requirement. So imagine you have your cloud hosted controllers. So let's say this is the manager, and you also have your vSmart or controllers. So these are in the cloud, and then you have your validator. Forgive my spellings. And then let's say you can and you also have these are in the cloud, and next to this you have in the same cloud you also have your cloud gateway, which is spun up if these are hosted by Cisco. So the cloud ops will host a gateway, which is a C8 kV, Catalyst 8000 virtual device. So that will have connection to these devices. So in this scenario, now in like there are two scenarios. One is if you are a service provider, and let's say you as a service provider, you also have your management platform on-prem, and let's say this is your this is like inside your data center. Let's say this is service provider data center. So you'll have like DMZ, and you will have different DMZs, and you will have your OSS, BSS systems here. So you might have, let's say, your, syslog. You might have your, TACAX or AAA here, and you might have ServiceNow or other ticketing systems that you monitor your customer networks. So imagine these. This is the scenario. So this is on-prem, and you have your you have your devices that are the that are sitting in your data center. So imagine like you have two data centers for redundancy, right? Now what happens is your like the why we need this is so let's say prior to this, prior to the webhooks, right? So let's say let's also put a firewall right here. So this is your firewall. So prior to the webhooks, right? What happens is you might have a polling system here, like a poller. So you poll this over this and to the manager, and then it is getting the data. But this polling is not real time. So you have to you don't get real time alarms or events or notification. And also you're consuming a lot of CPU and processing on your manager by doing these calls every while. Now with webhook, the advantage is like you can now get real time notifications, so using a simple HTTP. So you have your webhook receiver, which is your on-prem system here. So now you get a real-time notification with webhook. Okay. Now prior to this, if you see, the manager has two networks. So for example, let me use a different color. So you have a VPN 0, or which is facing to the internet. This is the control interface. So the manager has the control interface in VPN 0, and then the webhooks were sent using this VPN 0 interface. Now, what happens with this approach is that This requires, your firewalls to punch holes, and you have to allow traffic from the internet, which is less secure, and your firewall teams and your compliance of security, there's a heavy risk involved with this. So the webhook notifications going over VPN 0 was supported up until 2016, right? So now what we are doing is, with this release, so we are introducing an option to send. So the manager also has uh, another interface in VPN 512. So usually this is where now from 20.16 onwards, the webhooks notifications can be sent through the private path towards the webhook server. So this webhook notifications can be now sent over more secure path. So you can form, basically you can send this webhook through this C8KV using your, either standard IPsec tunnel or using the SD-WAN tunnel. So now what happens is, because the webhooks are coming on more secure path over this private network, your security risk is less, and that is what we're providing support in this with VPN 512 support, and we'll talk about in details, like how this is all going to come into. So let me just now proceed to the slides. So with this release, we are introducing a more secure option for providing webhook notification support over VPN 512. We'll talk about the role-based access control. So we are introducing a flag which will say, when you have that flag enabled, you can, as a provider, you can say whether this external notifications like AAA and the webhook notifications are managed fully by provider, then you can set up the flag as provider managed. And we are enforcing like a kind of a role-based access control. Now, anytime a user goes into the tenant portal as a customer, they will see the settings, but they'll not have any write access. So we'll talk about that in detail. In terms of other enhancements in 20.16, we have other use case where we saw customers are like their operations teams. Today, like if let's say they want to monitor alarms for different customers. Let's say you have customers about like 100 customers. And today, if you want to manage and monitor, troubleshoot the network for these 100 customers, you have to, build, customized dashboard that can consolidate these alarms or events in one central location or a dashboard. So there's a lot of development required, and it's not easy to troubleshoot. Today, if you want to troubleshoot, you have to log into each portal which the customer belongs to, and then look at the logs or alarms or events. So with 20.16, now as a provider on the single dashboard, we are able to make this possible. So that will simplify your tenant, your day and operations. So under single provider portal, you should be able to filter based on tenants like the events and alarms. So we have a new option where we are providing more enhanced visibility into the alarms and notifications, what's happening in the network. So now that becomes easier for you to manage and monitor the network. So this is another enhancement, and I'll show that in the demo as well. So the next set of enhancements we're bringing up in 20.16 is about controller visibility or vSmart visibility. So the use case here is like, let's say some tenants would be looking for co-management or co-policy. as a provider, they are asking to asking the provider, hey, I want to see my routes, what's happening in my network. I want to look at the controllers. Today, before 2016, they don't have any visibility of the controllers. They only get information about their edge devices inside the tenant portal. So it's going to be again causing a lot of challenge for them to have some limited visibility every time they want to look at some OMP routes. They have to either call the provider or get access and get on a call, and it is time consuming, right? So now with 20.16, as a provider, you can give them this capability where as a provider, you can go to the tenant management and select an option that will enable a controller visibility on a per tenant. You can enable that. And now whichever tenant is looking to see this information, now once you enable that, they'll be able to see the control components like controller, and they can see like the OMP routes, and they get this visibility added in the tenant portal as well. Now, let's just talk about the use case that I was talking about earlier, right? If you look at where we have this multi-tenant service connector use case, which is just the C8 kV that is sitting next to the cloud controllers that is hosted by Cisco. So this is called as a service connector. It's nothing but your C8 kV that is supporting multiple tenants, right? And that's also providing connectivity to your on-prem resources like AAA, your Webhook, or other services that like if you want to SSH to devices. So that service connector is what is providing that centralized and connectivity to your resources, your tooling systems on a tenant and for the provider as well. So even as a service provider, you might have services that are used for your users. So all these is done through the service connector. So that's basically the service connector use case is you need to know is that it's just a C8 kV device that is sitting next to the cloud hosted controllers. And that simplifies all the connectivity aspect and providing the secure connectivity to the resources. And we'll double click on the use cases, what kind of once it's provider managed or tenant managed, what are the requirements. We'll talk about that. So in terms of the feature overview, what we are introducing in 2016, so we have added support for webhook notifications, real-time notification over VPN firewall. And for AAA, before 2016, there is no support for sending the AAA over, let's say, imagine you have a non-SD-WAN device. So if you have a non-SD-WAN device in your on-prem data center, and that can support like IPsec tunnel. So before before 20.16, you to do the tenant AAA, you can only do via the SD-WAN option, SD-WAN tunnels. But now with this, you can have an IPsec tunnel over this for also for device user authentication. So when user logs in, a tenant user or a provider user logs into the manager, like let's say you have the AAA server or TACAC server here. Now this IPsec tunnel can be used to provide AAA authentication for your provider and tenant user over the direct IPsec tunnel. So you can use a non-SD-WAN device. And the other thing is we are also like for co-management or co-policy. So where we can we can support per tenant webhook over the VXLAN path as well. That like in 2012, if you know the per tenant AAA feature, which uses the VXLAN. So we are adding this support for if customer has webhook server in tenant data center, like a customer data center, and now they can use the per tenant webhook feature to support this as well. So we have added this flag which will allow the provider to say like whether it is provider managed, and if it is provider managed, the tenant users will have read access. So these are the top use cases. So if you have like providers have their webhooks, and tenants in the shared DMZ they have the tenant webhook and provider webhook. So now what they can do is they can use the regular standard IPsec tunnel with this VPN 512 network connectivity. So they can use the standard IPsec tunnel, and if they have like a non-SD-WAN device, they can still support webhook notifications over this path using the native underlay path from VPN 512. Now, I mean, like this is over the 512, which is the direct path, standard IPsec towards your to your on-prem device. Now this is the provider managed. So the provider is fully managing the webhook for the customers and for the provider as well. Now in a scenario where the tenant has the tenant tenant comes to the provider and says, I want to bring my own webhook server and my own services in my data center, then they can use the second use case, which is the tenant managed. So this will use the SD-WAN tunnel from the service connector, but the network connectivity for this will be, there will be a, for each tenant, there will be a VXLAN virtual network identifier, and the traffic for, let's say, tenant one comes from the manager. So let's say there's a VNI 1000 for tenant one, and there's a request for tenant 2. So when the tenant 2 is requesting, we'll create another VXLAN tunnel with a different VNI, say let's say 2000 for tenant 2, and then all these will be segmented. The VXLAN gets terminated on the C8 kV, and then we will then use the VPN to put the traffic on the SD-WAN fabric for tenant 1 and for tenant 2, and then the traffic goes to the tenant data center. So this is like providing end-to-end segmentation from the overlay to using the SD-WAN fabric to the tenant's data center. So this is the tenant managed use case. Now for AAA, I think this is the only part that is new, like I mentioned, is the standard IPsec path, where if you have a non-SD-WAN device, and now you can have the AAA authentication for your provider users and also for your tenant users over this IPsec path. Now the network connectivity is using the 512, which is the underlay path here. So that's the only part that is new. And the per tenant AAA, which was there from 20.12 onwards for radius or TACAX authentication, there is nothing that is supported from 20.12 onwards, which is this use case. So I'm not going to focus much on this one. This is the part that is new. So in terms of the demo, right? So what we'll see in the demo is we'll have this topology here. So let me just give a quick idea of for the webhooks, right? What part is something that exists, and what is something that 2016 supports. So the green path is something that existed before, which is less secure. So the webhook notifications go over VPN 0 from the manager. Now with 2016, the blue path is what we are going to see. So what I'm going to show in the demo for tenant 3 and tenant 5, I will have a standard IPsec tunnel. In my case, I'm just using the service connector. So I'm just using one device for using for all the tenants to do the standard IPsec tunnel and also the VXLAN for like let's say tenant 4. instead of like you can have like a different device if you like, but I'm just using single device for both the use cases. So what we'll see for tenant 3 and tenant 5, we I have a webhook receiver for the two tenants, which is of 10.10.0.22, which is sitting in my data center. Imagine this is the provider data center. And for tenant 3 and tenant 5, we will generate some alarms, and we will see whether the webhook notifications are sent over the direct path. So let me switch to the demo now. So this is my manager, which is running the 20.16 code. So I have this, this is running 20.16, 20.16.1. And I have, you can see all the, I have a 3 node manager cluster. And if you come down here, you will see the tenants information. So I have 4 tenants onboarded on these controllers. And so the interest of for us is this tenant 3, tenant 4, and tenant 5. For the direct path, we're using the standard IPsec tunnel. We'll focus on tenant 3 and tenant 5. So if you take a look here under administration, you can you can go to the tenant management, and under tenant management, so these are the different tenants that I have, and their portals for each tenant. And within this, like in 2016, if you click on this settings option, we have added this new option which has the service connector and notifications for webhooks and AAA services, and the controller visibility, which we talked about, right? Now, once you select these, and you can now edit each tenant, like let's say in tenant 3, let's edit this. You can now set up, okay, how do you want the services for this integration to happen? So as a provider for tenant 3 and tenant 5, they come and say, you manage my network for my AAA authentication for my users. I don't want to create any users on my manager, and you provide my service, AAA service. Now, in this case, you can select this as fully managed by provider. So you can say, I have set it up for fully managed for both tenant 3 and tenant 5. And now once you set this up, so let's say I go and log in with my tenant portal here. So let's log in. Let's log into the tenant. So if I log in with the tenant user, I will see that I'll only have read access. So let me just show that right here. So I'm just going to go to the tenant URL and now log in with the tenant 3 user. So now once I'm in the tenant portal, once I have set up the flag as provider managed, if you go to the logs, and if you want to set up the, let's say, webhook notifications, if you click on the alarm notifications, and you can see that you only have read access. As a tenants, they can only view this configuration. They cannot modify anything because it is managed fully by the service provider. And that's the role-based access control. And see, this is all grayed out. And now if they want to manage, users and access for remote AAA or TACX, if you see, you click on these options, it will say that these are managed by provider, contact your service provider. So you have a complete role-based access. They can just view the information, but they cannot change anything. So that's the RBAC with the provider managed flag that I was saying. Now let's go to this and really see what the provider has set up in the provider portal for the webhook notifications. So let's go here. So this is the provider view. So as a provider user, you can see now you have an edit option. You can add new rule. You can add everything. So what I've set up is like I've set up this already, and you can see I'm monitoring for all the alarms, and I'm using the custom webhook, and I'm using the VPN 512 underlay for tenant 3. So let's go ahead and do a reboot so that on this device, and then see if we can get a webhook notification for this tenant. So I'm going to select this device and do a reboot. And let's go to the my webhook server here. So right now, you can see the reboot takes some time. So there's nothing coming up. So these are like done before my demo. So I was just trying some, and I saw like the webhook notifications getting received, but while the reboot is happening, let's go back to tenant 5 and also check for the tenant 5. Let's do some triggers on tenant 5. So let me go to tenant 5. So let me just go from here. So as a provider admin, now I'm going to tenant 5. And so let's go to tenant 5. Let's do some triggers on the tenant 5 so that we can get the notifications. So let's see if we got any notification yet for the reboot. Not yet. Okay, now maybe I have to log in. So I'm just using the Flask's open source, and let's see if looks like we received the events because I see the timestamp changed here to Jan 8th and the time changed. So let's see. Okay, so I think this is the one we were sending the reboot, and you can see that we did receive some notifications. So let's go up. So let's see. Yeah, so this is the system IP, and you can see we received some like after the reboot, like we received these rules. So the OMP peer state changed, and like all these we see this. So if I go and just do a VI of the file. So if I go towards yeah, so I'm just scrolling up to see the reboot event, and if you see, I'm just going up. Yeah, so you see the system reboot event happened. Here you can see reboot issued. So now you can like we saw the webhook notification. So let's see the device rebooted, alarm got triggered. Let's just compare the UUID for this rule and whether that matches the manager logs. So let's copy this UUID and let's go to the manager, and let's go to the tenant 3. Let's go to tenant 3, and let's look at the logs. Now let's search for that. So you can see we got a system reboot at 10:36. The device got rebooted, and this is the UID for the alarm. And we managed to, is sent this. And you can also see audit logs. It will say whether the notification is sent to the webhook server or not. So we saw that working. Now let's go here and now just do the tail again, and then let's trigger some alarms for tenant 5, which is also using the provider managed webhook. So let's go to tenant 5. This time, instead of a device reboot, let's just restart, the restart the OMP. So let's go here to the device. I can't zoom this further because this is the default. So let's do clear SD-WAN OMP all. And this would, restart, control connection to the controller or vSmart, and then we should see some alarms. So let's go now, monitor, and let's look at the logs. And now let's go to the webhook receiver. You can see now for 1.1.50.1, which is my tenant 5, and you can see the tenant name, MTC tenant 5. So we started receiving the webhook notifications for OMP going down. So this confirms that in real time we are getting these events, and our webhook receiver is getting those events. And so this was for you can see for tenant 3, and this is for tenant 5. Now, if you can do the same thing, you can check here on the alarms, and you can also see the audit logs that confirms the notification was successfully sent, right? So yeah, that was the provider, provider managed webhook notification. Now for tenant 5, so I have, let's go to the provider portal. So for tenant 5, for tenant 4, excuse me, for tenant 4, I'm doing the tenant management, tenant manage mode. So it's so if you see for tenant 4, it's not there's no flag for provider managed. So that means it is if you edit this, you will see that provider is providing co-management. So in this case, the tenant wants to manage the notifications or triplet themselves. So if you click cross launch here to this page, you will see like if the tenant user logs in, they will have right access so that they can see and they can modify the configurations for the webhooks. So here you can see the tenant can do edit, and here you can see the connectivity. So this, when you have a tenant managed, the network connectivity uses the VXLAN path from the from the SD-WAN manager. So it uses this VXLAN tunnel. So for tenant 4, the traffic will be coming over this path through the VXLAN. So it will not go through the underlay VPN 512. So it will use from the service connector. You will have the VXLAN gets terminated, and then it uses the SD-WAN fabric and comes to the VPN 10, which is where the webhook server service VPN information where the webhook server is residing. So that's what you configured here. So you can see this is a unique subnet in the tenant or customer network that the vManage or the manager uses. And then this is the destination VPN where the webhook server for the customer is resided on this for this tenant 4. So in this case, what I have is a different webhook receiver. So because it's sitting in the tenant data center. So for tenant 4, let me use a different color. So for tenant 4, the webhook receiver that I have is 10.140.40.10. So now let's see if I'm like you have seen the configuration. So let's trigger some device reboot here. So let's go to the webhook receiver for tenant 4. So right now we didn't have any notification. So let me go ahead and do a device reboot here as well. So this is for tenant 4, which is using the VXLAN path as the network connectivity. So now once the reboot occurs like it is scheduled, you should see notification for tenant 4. So earlier I was doing some tests here, so you can see I've received some notification for tenant 4. So here is the tenant name for tenant 4. So once the reboot happens, you will see the notification coming up eventually on this device as well. So you can see we just received a new notification. Reboot was issued this with this system IP and for this tenant 4. And again, you can just take the rule unique ID, and then you can search for this. So let's go back to the manager. So if you go here under logs, so if you just search for that, you should see the just device reboot happened, now, and then this is the event, and then you should also see the corresponding audit log. So that that kind of concludes my demo. And one thing I wanted to show you is, as a provider, you can see all the logs in one single place. So let's say you want to see all the tenant alarms. You can now see. You can click on this tab here, says View Tenant Alarms, and now you can filter based on tenants. So maybe I want to see the logs from these 3 tenants for all the devices, and let's say for all severity and for all notifications. So now you can apply these filters, and now at a single provider dashboard, you see all the tenant specific alarms and events in one single page. So you don't have to go to each portal and go to each portal and cross launch into all these. You can just have these alarms consolidated in a single place. So that's the tenant alarms. And the final one I want to show you was the controller visibility. So you can see now for tenant 3, if you edit the tenant, as a provider on a given tenant basis, you can turn on this visibility. So right now the default is off. As a provider, let's say you want to provide this tenant controller visibility into the controller or vSmart, that you can just hit update. And now when the tenant goes and logs in as a tenant 3, so if you go to the monitor, so I'm on the tenant 3's portal. So as a tenant user, now they see all the controller components. So if they click on the controller, they will see the vSmart information, the control connections, and they can also like go to the real time. And now they can look at the OMPPers, they can look at the routes, and they can look at all the received routes, and so they get all the visibility now. So that is the other capability of the other enhancement we have. That would be concluding my demo. So let me go back to the slides now. So it's the same thing happens for the AAA as well. So I have a AAA server where I can log in as a tenant user, and I will still have authentication. So I can show you the configuration for that for tenant for the AAA. So you can see for the tenant AAA for provider managed. If you go here, and let's say you are under tenant 3 here. So let's say you go to administration, users and access. So this is a case where the service provider has configured the tenant AAA TACAX authentication. So I'm using logging using TACAX authentication, because if you see the user that I logged in, it's a tenant 3 user, and this user doesn't exist on the manager. It is just so, like, let's say it is just existing on my AAA server. So I can just you can delete this user, doesn't matter. So I mean, as a provider, you can delete this, but since I have the AAA configured, so I can SSH using that user to that device. So that's the AAA workflow. So same thing for AAA. So this is the configuration. So I'm gonna quickly breeze through these slides because most of this we have already covered in the demo. So what we have is a new provider managed flag, which will enforce role-based access control. And you also get a audit log each time you toggle this flag inside the provider dashboard. So here is what, like, if you have that flag on, you will only see as a tenant user, you will only view the configuration, but you will not be able to modify or change anything. So that option is fully grayed out for both AAA and for webhook notifications or real-time uh, notifications. So that's pretty much it. So if you want to do the tenant managed, again, these are the steps for you to do when you have the tenant managed. So the tenant managed case in tenant 4, it uses the service connector workflow using the VXLAN tunnel. So if you go to the administration and tenant managed, so let's go to tenant 4. If you do the edit, so you have to provide the service connector. This is the service connector IP, which is going to be the VXLAN tunnel, which is on the device. So if you see that, you can see right here, like I'll show you the config later, but that's the interface, the logical interface for the VXLAN tunnel on which device. So if you have multiple devices, you can select those as well. And then you can specify the interface towards your underlay towards the manager, which is gig 3 in my case. And then that's it. And then you hit update, and that will set up the VXLAN tunnel. So that those are the steps that are highlighted here. And for tenant 4, you can see we already reviewed. It is using the VXLAN path, and you have the network connectivity. You will have to specify the source subnet and the destination VPN. And I'm not going to read the slides here. You have these for your reference, and just go through that, which we covered during our demo as well. So like you can get all these notifications. So if it is tenant managed, so that was the prior slide was tenant managed. But for AAA, if you have provider managed, you can see now this release for AAA, we are starting supporting the IPsec tunnel use case. So you can have the non-SD-WAN device in your tenant in your provider data center, and now you can use the IPsec tunnel. So you can see the network connectivity for this case for the underlay VPN 512. So now the tenant authentication can also support using the direct path. So that's the new thing that we have added for AAA in 2016. The per tenant AAA using VXLAN path existed before 2016. So it existed from 2012 onwards. So again, these are some of the role-based access control. So what happens if you log in as a tenant when you have the flag for provider turned off, and when you have the flag for provider turned on, what happens when the tenant logs in? They get just read-only access. So again, just skim through these for your reference. And if you want to use APIs to configure this instead of the UI, these are the API endpoints that we have, and these are the bulk these are the APIs you can use. There's no parcel config, or there's no parcel created for service connector. It's all done through the API. So you don't have to. There's no YAN model. It's all done through through the REST API. So that's what this APIs. And how do you verify stuff? Like so you can go to the audit logs, which we already saw in the demo, and you can go like much detail if you want to look at some failures. You can go to var log, NMS, vmanage server log, and alarm log to look at more detailed alarms. Let's say you have some issue with webhook or AAA notifications, you can look at these logs. So again, when you toggle the flag, you can also get an audit log generated from provider managed. In this case, the provider managed is false. So this is a tenant managed use case. You get an audit log. So when you have multiple nodes in the manager. So let's say I have a three node cluster. The VXLAN gets established for from the multi-tenant controller from the MTC, the service connector. So each interface you'll have a tunnel towards each node. So let's say when you have like three node, you'll have like, let's say, tunnel one for manager one. You'll have tunnel two. You'll have tunnel three. So you'll have three VXLAN tunnels, and you can see that one of them, like in a three node cluster, one node will be master, and that node will be responsible for creating these tunnels on this device and putting the configuration for the VXLAN on the service connector. And I'll show you that in the slides as well. So if you look at all the, like, if customer provided in the service connector use case for webhook at a tenant data center. So if they have a webhook server in their tenant data center, using the VXLAN, we create inside the manager, and this requires a root access, and usually customers will not have that, so you either have to reach to TAC, Cisco TAC, so they can look at your organization subnet, and then they can check the namespace, and they can see the VXLAN gets I have three interfaces, so I have three tunnels that are originating from the manager with this source IP, and we take a /31 from the provided subnet. So this subnet is coming from the configuration by the by the tenant. So this is a tenant provided subnet, and we establish VXLAN from the manager with this IP from the provided subnet. And if you want to look at the net NS manager logs, like you can also use the var log net NS manager logs and look for these in case there are some errors. How you can verify that. So this is what I was talking about. So if let's say this is the service connector. So I have three node manager. So I have three tunnels, tunnel 400, 401, 402. And you can see the destination for the VXLAN is the 2.1, 2.3, 2.5. If you go back and see the manager has 2.0, 2.4, 2.2. So these are the tunnels that get established between the manager and the service connector, for the tenant webhook use case over the VXLAN. So yeah, that's about how you can verify. So one of the guideline that you limitation we have is we don't support this use case over 512. Let's say if you are using a proxy, if you're using if you have configured an HTTP proxy on the manager, then the webhook notifications to be sent over the direct path using the underlay VPN 512 is not going to be supported. So just be aware of this limitation. So these are some of the external references on documentation links that you can go over this new capability which we have added for from 20.16. So with that, I just wanted to say that, like, there's a lot of innovations we keep on adding, and Catalyst SD-WAN is the only place and the best solution out there for supporting different use cases for your complete providing your user authentication or device authentication. We talked about various use cases in terms of like TACACS or AAA authentication, in terms of receiving webhook notifications in real time across like on-prem, and providing differentiation between provider AAA or TACACS and webhook versus tenant TACACS or webhook. Tenants, webhook or TACACS, all different use cases is all possible with the Catalyst SD-WAN. So that concludes my end of the presentation. Carlo, are there any open questions, or if not, let me know.
Definitely. Again, thank you, Karthik, for more informative session. So at this time, we'll go ahead and take questions. So just as a reminder, please be sure to type your questions into the question and answer panel. And it looks like we just have one question that came in, and it's about if this session will be recorded and how can they go about accessing it. I'm going to go ahead and paste that link and that information in the chat. But basically, we'll have a edited version of the recording of today's session on the Cisco Learning Network. Over on the Cisco Learning Network, that link is in the chat. Please go ahead and when you do click on that link, you just got to scroll down the page. You'll see Cisco validated training videos, and in there, there's a button to click the watch now to pull up that learning plan. I do apologize, as well as included the link to where you can continue the conversation if you do have any additional questions from today's session. So definitely bookmark that page. You'll also be redirected to that page afterwards. Just note that for that edited recording, it will take about 3 to 5 business days. So you won't see it now, but you'll see it in 3 to 5 business days. However, we do have the YouTube link, which will be available. And let me copy and paste that into the chat now. So definitely bookmark that if you need it sooner. You can just access that recording, and that should be made available immediately. So as you exit, you should be able to review it. Okay, Karthik, it doesn't look like there's any other questions, but we'll keep an eye out on that post-event discussion thread over on the Cisco Learning Network. Do you have anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
I'm good. Thank you all. And looking forward to if there are any further questions, please feel free to reach out.
Gotcha. All right. Actually, there is one that just came in. Oh, you know what? No, not a question. It was just a statement. So do apologize. They just say, thanks a lot for your efforts and platform who offer and continue supporting us by webinars. Our pleasure. And with that, I want to thank you, Karthik, and the whole team for bringing your knowledge to the Cisco community. Again, if you have a question, please do visit us on the Cisco Learning Network on that post-event discussion thread. For even more tutorials and demonstrations, do visit the Cisco Learning Network. Okay. At this time, you'll be directed to a survey because your feedback is definitely important. So we do encourage you to take the time to participate. Once again, we thank everyone for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.